On days like today, with Bitcoin at 110K, normies will look at the chart and say it's down 6% over the past month. They'll look at the chart action and say it's too volatile. The obvious fact is that Bitcoin started the year at 93K. And even grifters like CZ realize that we're going to be saying Bitcoin is crashing when it falls from $1 million to 985,000 a coin.
Everyone has this blind spot. This blind spot is they're worried about the risk of owning Bitcoin when they don't realize the risk of not owning it.
They're missing the point. With the lines between money and state being blended, with Donald Trump firing a Federal Reserve chair and the US government taking a 10% stake in a company, Bitcoin represents our last and only chance at money being separate from the state. In a time when we're all focused on price, let's focus on the things that really matter. Sovereign money, freedom money. Like always today, we're going to break down Bitcoin simply, where we are and where we're going. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go. Okay, everybody, calm down. Bitcoin at 110K is at a price that we've only been for 3 days in the history of Bitcoin. And for context, September is the worst performing month for Bitcoin. In historical terms, it's the only month where we've averaged negative price over Bitcoin's history. And the next 2 months, October and No Shave November, are Bitcoin's best performing months. Calm down. And this isn't even just in terms of Bitcoin. In the context of the broader market, whenever the VIX drops like it has this month, over 60%, well, forward-looking returns for the S&P 500 average over 100% the next 5 years. Stay calm and stack on. One of the most massive pieces of news happened yesterday, regardless of price. Donald Trump, a sitting president, fired a Federal Reserve Chair member, Lisa Cook, for alleged fraud and falsifying information to purchase and acquire property. I'm not taking any sides here. There's a 100% possibility that there could be misconduct. I mean, these are high-ranking officials and people that are in the government. And the president is certainly setting a precedent for wielding power with unilateral control that I also don't agree with. I mean, say what you want about Uncle Rome, Jerome Powell. He's made it very clear that the Fed is to not be controlled by the US government for good reason. Even though the Federal Reserve controls the flow and the capital of money in the world for people like you and me, they are not controlled by the United States government. And soon, Donald Trump will have influenced the election of the majority of the Federal Reserve Board. Slippery slope, sort of like the government taking a 10% stake in Intel. Yeah, Donald Trump says that they did it for free by using money from the CHIPS Act and other leftover federal funds, but you're still picking winners and losers. You can see this blending between the money of the state happening right before our eyes. I mean, look at Tether, an organization, a technology that was once known for being freedom money for the undeveloped nations, giving people access to financial tools and systems that they didn't have before. Well, now they're on a crash course for getting in bed with the United States government, specifically with the hiring or appointing of Bo Hines as the U.S. director for Tether.
I'd be lying if I didn't say we want to dominate. You know, I think that entering the U.S. market, we feel as if, again, we're uniquely positioned to be the stalwart in the space. And that's what attracted me to Tether. You know, I wanted to go somewhere I could build, have fun, and obviously work with the most intelligent and brightest people. And I feel like I found a home here at Tether to do that. You know, we'll be moving quickly. And I know Paolo's indicated, like, we're obviously considering the U.S. product. We'll see in time what that looks like. We'll be ready to reveal that in due time. But, you know, my mission is to be the number one player in this space as well, to match what they're doing and with the rest of the globe. And I think that we're going to get that done. I think we're going to move quickly to get it done. And I think that it's really exciting, not only for our country, but for the rest of the space. And, you know, I'll go back to your question you asked, Paolo, about some of the other players. You know, I think that many of these players are positioned in a way that they're almost cannibalizing themselves. And I think that our mission here is, one, to educate other people and to bring more people into the ecosystem, because that's better for everyone and we can grow all together as we do that. And so, you know, you'll see some of the initiatives that we push are keenly focused on doing just that. And just, you know, rising tides raise all ships. I do believe that. I just want to be the leader of those ships. And I think that we're going to accomplish that in short order.
It's clear with this sort of collaboration, there's going to be cooperation. There's going to be surveillance and tracking of money. There's going to be the ability for the government and government agencies to pick winners and losers, people who can have access to this money and people who don't. Need I remind you again, that's the whole plan for stablecoins in the first place, is for them to be buyers of the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. debt, and for them to be a shadow money printer. Michael Howell explains this well on his latest podcast with TFTC.
What you can see in the data right now is that the growth of, looking at the growth of bank balance sheets, it's being driven a lot by purchases of government debt. This is monetization. So, you know, what we're doing is we're embarking down the route of monetary inflation. I mean, these are the fears that everyone's got. And that monetary inflation is ultimately going to come through in terms of devaluing people's wealth or just increasing the cost of living. And so what you need is dedicated monetary inflation hedges. And that means gold, it means Bitcoin, etc. And I think that, Bitcoin, in my view, is definitely the future. And I think that the US officially has to endorse that pretty quickly before somebody else does. And I think that, if the US wants to maintain control of the global financial system and the dollar, it makes every sense to get on board with Bitcoin pretty quickly. Because, if what would happen if China did, for example, I think it would be important to get that, to get that staking quickly.
For those of you who don't know how this works, yes, money is actually created out of thin air, and it was done through fractional reserve banking. In a video posted 13 years ago, this is actually explained of how this works and how money is, yes, in fact, created out of thin air.
This is possible because of what's referred to as fractional reserve lending. The way it works is that the Federal Reserve, or the central bank in any country, is legally allowed to determine the amount a bank must have on reserve. In the US, it's currently around 10%. So if you deposit $10,000 into the bank sets aside 10%, or $1,000, and then loans out the rest of your money. The way it works is, say another person comes into the bank and asks for a car loan of $9,000. At this moment, the bank loans out the $9,000 from your original deposit. It isn't there anymore. The borrower then pays the person selling the car, and they go deposit the money into another bank, which is part of the same central banking system. This $9,000 is treated as a new deposit, and the process continues. The money gets redeposited and reloaned until the initial deposit of $10,000 becomes $100,000.
Well, since 2020, they don't even need to hold 10% reserves. Their fractional reserve requirements are 0%, so literally infinite money printing. Even Grok knows it's a scam and says that Bitcoin is the only option out. Bitcoin was created to solve a problem to separate money from the state, that there would not be a central party in between people that want to transact and move value.
All you have to do is look at the first page of the white paper, which I encourage everyone to do, which is it only sought out to solve one problem, which is verifying that there's no double spending. You're not spending twice without having to rely upon a third party. Like, it literally is just, how do we transmit money without having to rely on a Visa or MasterCard or a bank to tell us that this was not a double transaction? That was it. That was the innovation. And the title of the white paper is Electronic Peer-to-Peer Cash. Like, that was the dream. That was the intention. It was supposed to be a way to transmit money, protocol for the internet to transmit money anywhere without a Visa or MasterCard or a bank or any gatekeeper whatsoever.
That's the mission, and that's what we're after. Sure, Bitcoin is held as a store of value, and it will continue to gain value over time. But let's realize on days like today, it's not all about price. Let's take a quick break and thank our sponsors. Ledn has been the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans since 2018. They've issued over $9 billion worth of loans to tens of thousands of customers. I've been a customer of Ledn, and the process is simple, fast, seamless, and transparent, which is why they have over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, which is why the loan process takes just about 2 minutes in order to get done, and liquidity can be in your account in as little as 6 hours. Loans start at just 12.4%, and you get 0.25% off your first loan by going to learn.ledn.io/simply. One of the reasons that you can protect your coin from the state is by removing it from third-party exchanges like Coinbase and others. Take self-sovereignty and self-custody of your financial future and your wealth. Don't do it alone. Work with a coach. Work with someone who can teach you how to do this privately, safely, and securely. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation with the team at the Bitcoin Way, the experts in helping you to protect your generational wealth the right way. Schedule a free 30-minute meeting at thebitcoinway.com/simplybitcoin. Let's get back to the show. When you look at what's happening in the broader market, you need to understand the long-term implications of what's happening and why the biggest risk is not owning Bitcoin.
Everyone has this blind spot. This blind spot is they're worried about the risk of owning Bitcoin when they don't realize the risk of not owning it. And so this blind spot can be explained with two assets. Think about real estate. Real estate is the best performing asset class in the world, particularly in the US, but generally in the world. And if you really think about it, it has tons of write-offs. It has tons of depreciation. it has tons of reasons to make it look like the asset actually is falling apart, which it is, because actually property needs lots of maintenance. So how could it possibly be that real estate continues to go up in value when actually it's getting all these favorable tax treatments? Is the wood becoming organically polymerized into superwood by itself? Is it becoming titanium and steel over time organically? No, it's actually not. And I would say the same thing with gold. Gold by its definitional element is not changing. So how is this thing constantly just going up in value? And if you really think about it, they're not going up in value. It's the dollars that are going down. Once you see that, it becomes really obvious that Bitcoin is actually a better asset imaginable to own for those same reasons of real estate and gold.
It's the dollars that are going down, and they will continue to go down when measured against hard assets. There's endless amounts of money being created in the banking system, and that's why Bitcoin is a hedge against the future inflation that will come.
What you can see in the data right now is that the growth of, looking at the growth of bank balance sheets, it's being driven a lot by purchases of government debt. This is monetization. So, what we're doing is we're embarking down the route of monetary inflation. I mean, these are the fears that everyone's got. And that monetary inflation is ultimately going to come through in terms of devaluing people's wealth or just increasing the cost of living. And so what you need is dedicated monetary inflation hedges. And that means gold, it means Bitcoin, etc. And I think that, Bitcoin, in my view, is definitely the future. And I think that the US officially has to endorse that pretty quickly before somebody else does. And I think that, if the US wants to maintain control of the global financial system and the dollar, it makes every sense to get on board with Bitcoin pretty quickly. Because, if what would happen if China did, for example, I think it would be important to get that, to get that staking quickly.
Once you understand these core concepts, you're not going to be wondering about what Bitcoin's doing today, this week, this month, but what Bitcoin's doing this decade, this century. The impacts are astounding. Don't overcomplicate the trade. Continue to invest in your Bitcoin journey by coming to hang with the Simply Bitcoin crew at the Mining Disrupt Conference from November 11th through November 13th in Dallas, Texas. Get 20% off your tickets by using the promo code Simply Bitcoin. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you learned how to zoom out on days like today. Stop looking at the price. Look at the big things that are happening in the market and the blending between the money and the state. Bitcoin is freedom money. Opt out. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.